Hi, I'm Danielle, and this is Chatter Out Loud, a podcast where I share thoughts and TV commentary, starting with one of my favorite shows, Big Brother. In this episode, I'm chatting about Celebrity Big Brother, Season 3, Episode 5. Tonight is all about the power of veto and the live eviction. I think we certainly have a good game going on right now, and I'm entertained, and I'm loving it so far. All right, so they start the episode off by picking up at the end of the nomination ceremony. NSYNC Chris is the head of household, and he nominated both Mariah and SNL Chris to go on the block. By now, it's the next day, so that puts them on day 11 in the house. Mariah says she will continue to fight, and she's a fighter. They're showing diary room clips, and so Mariah says she's going to continue to fight and continue to play hard. SNL Chris says he's loving being in the house and does not want to go home. This surprises me because I didn't get that vibe that he was happy to be there. And it's interesting, at the end of the episode, it's interesting his speech. Anyway, it just surprised me that he said he didn't want to go home. Nevertheless, so Misha is still going on her rant about Carson being the bigger target, and now NSYNC Chris, and how NSYNC Chris doesn't get it, right? So her diary room clip, she's like, well, Carson is the target, and I guess they're not in sync. They keep throwing in the NSYNC reference, and it's getting old, but nevertheless, she's just convinced that NSYNC Chris doesn't know. He just doesn't get it. Shayna is under the belief that Mariah is Misha's minion. Those are her words. So that's the reason that they are justifying getting rid of her, because they think that she would just do whatever Misha wants and basically be a number for Misha. And clearly they think Misha is running the house. That's the conclusion. They think Misha is running the house, and so they don't want to give her more ammunition. Well, not ammunition. Yeah, they don't want to give her more ammunition, so they're getting rid of one of her people, quote unquote people. All right, so Tardrick was giving Mariah a pep talk to fight for the veto and comforting her, and I thought that was nice. They then cut to Todd Bridges snoring. They keep showing clips of him snoring. Of course, it wakes up SNL Chris, and he attempts to get up and walk out of the room. I suppose that's what he was attempting to do, but he wound up falling and bumping his head, bumping into the dresser, bumping into other house guests in their bed. He can barely maneuver around the room. And then they cut into Carson saying, when they cut off these lights, it's pitch black. It's so dark in the room. And so that they were tying that into why SNL Chris fell and bumped his head, I suppose, because it's so dark. And I think that there's some truth to that. Because it's a new surrounding for all of them, right? And so you got to get used to maneuvering around. It's only day 10. Probably they haven't gotten a good night's sleep. Like, especially in that first week, they are celebrities, so they are a little pampered. Yeah, I was watching the feeds, by the way, and they get their laundry done. Like, they don't wash their own clothes. They get their laundry done. And it was just funny to me because both Carson and Cynthia were complaining that the clothes weren't really clean. I don't know. It just, that rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, ugh. They're pampered, but it is Celebrity Big Brother, so they're treated differently than the regular season. Okay, where did I pick off? So after, SNL Chris was trying to get out the bed. He fell, bumped his head. It looked pretty painful. I'm surprised they didn't turn on the lights, being that, they're supposed to be taped 24/7. How come one of the producers or someone watching the video didn't, or is someone there live there? They should have turned on the light. Anyway, in this episode, wait, do I want to say anything more about that? Let's see. Yeah, he could barely get around. He fell. Okay, so apparently things have shifted so swiftly because now NSYNC Chris and Shayna are planning to weaken Misha's side of the house. And I'm well, you can't see me, but quote unquote Misha's side of the house. And it's interesting how now they're kind of using that terminology, right? Because they see Misha as the head and that she is just running things on that side of the house. And why I'm confused is because in the beginning, when Misha was setting up the Athletes Alliance, she approached Lamar, NSYNC Chris, and Todrick. So NSYNC Chris was part of the Athletes Alliance. But the way Shayna has been getting into NSYNC Chris's head and that final 2 deal that they made, she kind of is chipping away or getting him to pull away from Misha. And I just find it interesting. I'm telling you, Shayna is playing the game. She cracked me up tonight with these platform shoes that she was trying to wear. And I'm like, is it really worth it? I mean, you couldn't even see the shoes. Yet she could hardly walk. There were a couple times, and I rewatched the episode. She almost fell twice. But anyway, Shayna is doing a good job in terms of keeping NSYNC Chris close to her and tight. And so much so that now the alliance that he had with the athletes, he's pretty much out of that, right? And she's convinced him that it's a they and he's not included in that they. It's very, I thought that was a masterfully done, I would say. Because before that, he was on board with the athletes. So it's funny how things change so quickly. And Shayna is doing a good job. All right. On the athletes, like, did I say Misha, Lamar, and Todrick? I hope I said, but NSYNC Chris was a part of that. All right. I think another reason why NSYNC Chris is being affected or influenced is because the weight of that HOH, that often gets people like paranoid because they are getting all this information, right? They're getting overwhelmed. Everybody wants to talk to them. Everybody's making deals. Everybody feels like they need to tell the HOH this and let them know a different part of the game and stuff like that. And so it can really affect the way they go into it thinking, I want this. And then by the time they hear everyone's spiel, they're confused and now they think people are after them. The paranoia sets in. They start to unravel. And we certainly see this on the live feeds with NSYNC Chris. Shayna is planting seeds and it's something else to see. All right. So the house is even more divided and basically we have Misha, Todrick, Lamar, and Mariah. They're in an alignment. I suppose we can continue to call them the Athletes Alliance, although they never technically put Mariah in it, but they were using her, as for a vote. But anyway, that's one segment of the house. Then we have Carson and Cynthia. They are a pair. Then now it's really solidified now. Shayna and NSYNC Chris, they are a pair. We have Todd Bridges and SNL Chris are somewhere in the middle. Todd Bridges, I think he leans towards the athlete side because he's close to Lamar. SNL Chris, I'm not sure where he leans. I know he does talk to NSYNC Chris a lot. We see that relationship forming, so that could be a play for him. But they are both in the middle, and they can be pretty much pulled to either side. And it will be really interesting to see what would happen if a Todd Bridges or SNL Chris won an HOH. So that's going to be a lot. I hope one of them wins so we can see what Misha does and everyone else does, right? All right. So anyway, the original Athletes Alliance pretty much done. And now it only includes Misha and Todrick. Now Lamar is in it, but Misha and Todrick are running it pretty much. And Misha first, then Todrick, right? They also pulled in Mariah. I already said that. So they're kind of working together. It's definitely a house divided. There's cracks forming. There's paranoia. People are starting to unravel. And we'll get into that a little more later in this episode. Lamar, just switching to another topic, Lamar shared a story about his son Jaden. I believe that's his son's name, who passed away from SIDS. He said that his son came to him in a dream, and it was just a special story. So I like that he shared that with us. It was pretty special. Misha continues to push to save Mariah, indicating Carson is the biggest threat for the quote-unquote team. So the way she was approaching it at first, NSYNC Chris rejected it because he's like, I'm going to play, I think Mariah is a bigger threat. And they kept going back and forth. So, of course, and I didn't see this on the live feeds, but I can only imagine that she and Todrick probably planned this, but now they started to change their language a little bit. So now they're saying, well, Carson is the biggest threat for the quote unquote team, right? Because remember, in Misha's mind, the Athletes Alliance included NSYNC Chris. So she's trying to convince him that Carson is the biggest threat for the Athletes Alliance. I think it's clever that they did that, but it's still not working because Chris is just hell-bent on getting Mariah out. I find it convenient that Misha and Todrick trying to convince NSYNC Chris that Carson is the threat for the team. I find that convenient for the two of them, but they're playing the game and I love it. But this is frustrating NSYNC Chris even more, and it's just strengthening his alliance with him and Shayna. So much so that they're considering other options to weaken Misha's side of the house. Now, I think that he said that just for TV, right? Because I think he wanted Mariah out based on whatever happened between the two of them, and he wasn't changing his mind. I think all the other stuff he was saying in terms of I could put this person up, and if she pulls herself down off the block, get ready. I think that was all for TV. I mean, it could be. I don't know. Maybe he really is unraveling and getting paranoid. Tonight's POV competition is taking inspiration from a new movie that's coming out called Marry Me and, Love and Valentine's Day. So the Veto players were Todrick, Shayna, Cynthia, along with NSYNC Chris, which is the head of household, and then SNL Chris and Mariah, which were the two nominees. So the 6 of them played in the competition. The competition was answering questions after viewing images. They have to identify which section of the image that they see a Marry Me sign. And it's like hundreds of signs across the screen. And you have to pick out where do you see Marry Me, that sign. And then they split the screen. They divide it into 3 sections, A, B, or C. And that's how you would answer. So they start off with one image. It's a whole bunch of signs. You're supposed to pull out or see where the Marry Me sign is. They then split the screen into 3 sections, and then you select where you saw the sign. The entire time, Mariah was doing well, but she fell off at the end. Shayna wound up winning the POV after a tiebreaker question between her and Todrick. They both scored 6 points each. Oddly, like when they asked the question was, give me around the number of hours from which the Monwan bag was put into play until Todd Bridges went on the block. And I swear, like Shayna, she didn't look like she understood the question at all. She just looked like she was so confused. So I think she just guessed her number, and her number was 72. Yeah. Todrick, on the other hand, he was going through all these calculations, writing on that board, and he came up with 180. So Shayna answered 72, Todrick answered 180, and the answer to the question was 175. And after that, I was so impressed by Todrick's math. But because he went over, automatically Shayna was declared the winner, right? All right. I do want to make a comment on NSYNC Chris's performance in that comp. I mean, it was horrible. There were 7 questions, and he only answered the last 2 correctly. The first 5 questions, it was 0, 0, 0. I'm like, are you looking at the same images everyone else is looking at? I don't know if it's his eyesight, because he squints a lot. So maybe he couldn't see. I don't know. But he performed horribly. And then SNL Chris, he wasn't even that much better. He scored 3 points. The rest of them scored between 5 and 6 points. All right. Shayna decided to keep the noms the same, so she didn't pull anyone off the block. So the house guests voted between SNL Chris and Mariah. It was a 7-0 vote where they evicted Mariah. So they all honored NSYNC Chris's wish to evict his target, and now Mariah is out of the game. And can I just talk about the speeches? SNL Chris, he pretty much told the house guests to vote for Mariah to stay. I mean, he started off saying that he didn't know much about the game. Mariah kind of, he didn't know much about the game. He said Mariah was emotional, so she should stay, and he's ready to go. Like, it just was not your traditional, I'm here to fight and stay kind of speech. He really doesn't know what's going on in the game. And everyone was laughing at him. And his face looked like, well, what are you laughing at? I don't understand, because he was serious. But I felt bad, and it was very awkward because it seemed like he was trying to be sincere in what he was saying, and everyone was laughing. And Cynthia, you see her hand slapping him and pushing him. It's just, I don't know. I didn't like that moment. On the other hand, Mariah kind of threw shade. She was saying that she was having such a hard time there because they're all so much older than she is. I said, look at her throwing shade. And then she threw a shout out to the cookout. Whoop, whoop. So that was cute. Oh, yeah. And did anyone else see where Lamar mouthed to Carson, who did you vote for? He doesn't know this game either. And it's funny just watching him on the feeds. He says funny things, but just watching them explain the game to him. It's pretty funny. But yeah, he mouthed to Carson, who did you vote for? And that's when they go through that little hallway to the diary room. Traditionally, house guests give like a fancy handshake, when they pass each other in that little hallway before they go to cast their vote. And from what I thought, they weren't allowed to share who they voted for or ask, talk about votes in that small period of time, when they pass each other. So to prevent that, they do like a fancy handshake. Anyway, none of that is going on with the Celebrity Big Brother house guests. I don't think any of them know that that's what they're supposed to do. Anyway, so it made me laugh when Lamar mouthed to Carson on his way to the diary room and Carson was coming out, who did you vote for? And Carson just hit him on the shoulder like, you're not supposed to ask me that. It was pretty funny. You have to go to rewatch that so you can see that. That was funny to me. All right. In Mariah's exit interview, she explained that she didn't relate to anyone in the house and how she felt lonely in the house. So I felt for her. But overall, I think she left with grace. I don't even know. Does anyone know how old she is? I have to look that up. SNL Chris, he seemed so confused that he stayed. I mean, he even said, I don't understand. Like when they said, let's go back to the house guests or let's check in on the house guests. He said, I don't understand. And he looks very uncomfortable in the house, you guys. It's kind of uncomfortable to watch at times. And the fact that like they laughed at him. I don't know. It was just very, very awkward. And it's just uncomfortable to watch him sometimes. It doesn't look like he's joking sometimes. I don't know. It's just weird. I can't articulate it really. Other than to say it's uncomfortable to watch him sometimes. All right. So this episode was packed with the POV and Live Eviction. Misha and Tardrick respected NSYNC Chris's wishes. So maybe that will calm the waters a little bit with their relationship. I don't know. I can't wait to see who wins the next HOH. I think it would be really interesting for SNL Chris or Todd Bridges to win. Right? I wonder, out of the two, would they put the other one up on the block? Because remember, they don't care for one another. I really believe SNL Chris is bothered by Todd Bridges snoring, because they pretty much show, like in all the episodes, that he snores. And it really keeps SNL Chris up at night. All right. So the next episode is on Wednesday, and we'll see the next HOH crown. And then Friday, we'll see the POV and then another eviction, right? So that's 2 evictions a week. And it looks like they're doing it on Mondays and Fridays. All right. So really quickly, a few things I learned on the live feeds. Okay. The first thing was that Todrick and Misha were in the storage room, and the conversation of NSYNC Chris's exit and the reason why he exited and came back, that came up, right? So in short, NSYNC Chris decided to make Mariah his target after their confrontation. I am a believer that that is the reason. It was an emotional reaction because they had some words. Okay. So it's a real thing, you guys. Something happened between them. Now, Todrick confirmed that something happened between them. He didn't necessarily give up like why, but let me explain. So Todrick confirmed it. He confirmed it by saying that NSYNC Chris is nominating Mariah based on emotion, saying that she had an emotional fit. She, meaning Mariah, had an emotional fit and said one sentence. And now NSYNC Chris is making an emotional play, trying to cover it by saying it's strategic. So he's kind of like calling out, Todrick is calling out NSYNC Chris, saying the only reason why he's making this play is because it's an emotional reaction based on that one sentence that Mariah said. And I'm telling you guys, the rumor of Mariah saying that he was a backup dancer for Justin Timberlake, I'm telling you, in my gut, I feel like that's the reason. I really do. Because remember, in the first episode on premiere night, he was adamant and so firm in saying, because someone said, how long or how did you get into the group NSYNC? And he said, how did I start NSYNC? He was very, very intentional in making sure he told everyone that he started NSYNC. He just didn't happen to end up in the group. He started it. So the fact, that's the only reason I believe it, because he was so adamant and intentional in making sure that we knew, America knew, and the house guests knew that he started NSYNC. And I'm telling you, it's like a psyche thing because of Justin Timberlake and all of his success and how people only think of Justin Timberlake when they think of NSYNC. It has to wear on those other members. You know, Lance Bass, he has like popularity and notoriety, you know, in his own right. But Justin Timberlake is the face of NSYNC, and I'm telling you, NSYNC Chris, it's bothersome to him. You can tell. Just go back and look at premiere night when he said that. And then for those of you, I know a lot of you like receipts. I'll give them to you in a second. But anyway, after Todrick said that, I still have questions. I would really like for them to repeat it, but apparently they can't talk about it, quote unquote, but they were talking about it in that storage room. So I believe it's based on Mariah's comment to NSYNC, right? That one sentence. All right. That was all that was divulged in that conversation. But going back, for those of you that like receipts, okay, so I'm going to tell you where you can find it in the live feeds. So if you go to February 7th, 12:39 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's on cameras 3 and 4. And then you'll see that conversation. And the conversation is between Misha and Todrick, and they're in the storage room. So go ahead and check that out. All right. Another thing off the live feeds, we see NSYNC Chris begin to really unravel. He's working himself up on all on his own. And you can see that on February 7th at 11:49-ish a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, 11:49 is Eastern Standard Time, and that's on camera 1. So you can see how he goes in and talking about, get ready if I do. I mean, just look at it. He's a little erratic, but you can see that. All right. And then Mariah, let's see, what was the thing? Then Mariah reading Oh, Mariah, I'm reading. I wrote that wrong. Mariah reaching out to NSYNC Chris. Now, don't get me wrong. I think after NSYNC Chris calmed down and he got his emotions into check, that didn't prevent him from trying to form a relationship with Mariah, because of course we're all human beings. If he heard that, if she said something that really triggered him, yeah, he may have lost his cool and had to be separated. But once he comes back, they're all adults. So clearly they were still trying to form some type of relationship because they were still talking to each other. And I say all that to say, because Mariah reached out to NSYNC Chris for support in standing up for SNL Chris. Mariah indicated that she was having a hard time watching what she perceives as people attacking SNL Chris. And I think it goes back to Todd Bridges reacting to SNL Chris. It stems from Todd Bridges. I think he reacted to SNL Chris when he was asking if he had sleep apnea. I think something like that happened. And I think that annoyed Todd Bridges, and he may have snapped at him. And then similar to what we witnessed on tonight's episode, they were all laughing at SNL Chris after his speech, and in general, even when he's not telling a joke, people are laughing at him, right? I don't think it's always nice, but anyway, Mariah was absorbing some of that. She was sensitive to them laughing at SNL Chris, and she just reached out to NSYNC Chris for help. So that was one thing I saw on the live feeds, and I'm sorry I didn't get that. Let me see. Oh, I did get that that timestamp. It's on 2/7 at 12:38 p.m. Oh shoot. Yeah, 2/7 12:38 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if it's not 12:38 p.m., look at a.m. I'm sorry, you guys. I put a timestamp, but I didn't put a.m. or p.m. and I didn't put the camera for that one. But it was 2/7 12:38. Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about on the live feeds was Shayna and NSYNC Chris. They are definitely a pair and they're definitely working together. I think Shayna is instigating just a little, and I think she instigates just to keep NSYNC Chris close to her, right? Because they are working as a final two deal. She doesn't want anyone to mess that up. So she throws little digs about Misha and Todrick, right? Because obviously Misha and Todrick are a pair. And so Shayna wants to keep NSYNC Chris close to her and keep their alliance together, their final two deal together. So she just throws out things just to keep NSYNC Chris in, keep him in check, basically, right? So she says things like, she made a comment. She's like, she even said, she even fed him. And when I saw that, I had to leave the table. That's what Shayna said to NSYNC Chris. And NSYNC Chris was like, what? She fed him? And she was like, yeah, when she fed him, I just had to get up and leave. I mean, and basically she's saying that because she's implying like she's tired of Misha and Todrick. Ultimately, that's what she's saying. Now, in their defense, I just want to offer a little context because I saw this part too. So Misha and Todrick, they were sitting next to each other at the dinner table. They were both eating salmon, and Misha thought hers was a little overcooked, right? So she kept saying, yeah, I think mine's a little overcooked, but it's okay. So she gave Todrick a forkful a try. Now, I do have to admit, I did side-eye Misha because I'm like, why are you I just looked at her like, oh my God, like what is going on? But that was the extent of it. It's not like, Misha was feeding him forkfuls and like, okay, let me get you, like feeding him like a baby. It wasn't like that. But, Shayna is pretty good and she indulges in her storytelling. So, but that's the game, right? So, all right. So I'll continue to watch the live feeds. I don't necessarily give spoilers from the live feeds, but I just try to share moments that I think are pertinent to the gameplay, at least in my opinion. All right, you guys. So that's all I have. Yep, that's all I have. So be sure to come back and give me a listen. Give me a follow, subscribe, leave me a comment, leave me a message. You can find me by looking for Chatter Out Loud. I have this podcast, I tweet, and I'm on YouTube. So look for Chatter Out Loud and you'll find me. I also have links in the description to where you can find me. So be sure to check that out. Yep. All right, so my name is Danielle, and you're listening to my podcast, Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, I appreciate your support. And that's all I have. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.